You're listening to A Creative Excuse presented by Echo a Mano. I'm Frank Rose.
And I'm Cara Duvall. This episode is with Annalise Gratovich, whose exhibition was at Echo back in October, but we didn't get a chance to sit down and record until recently when we were both exhibiting at Print Austin.
Annalise is a printmaker based in Austin and will be exhibiting her large-scale works at Echo in 2026. You can find out more about her work on our website or at annalisegratovich.com.
Up next at Echo is our Sunday Donut Experience with artist talks by Taryn Laskin and Luis Garcia, Sunday, March 16th, 12 to 1:30 p.m.
We'll also be presenting at the Brooklyn Fine Art Print Fair, March 27th through 30th. So if you're in New York, come by and say hello. You can find out more info about the fair at brooklynprintfair.org.
Thanks for listening.
Our halfway point between here and Santa Fe is Big Spring, Texas.
Oh, yeah.
And we stayed in a La Quinta, which had perhaps the worst coffee I've ever had in my life.
I bet.
It's one of those like Keurig cup things, the little plastic cups that you put in there. So gross.
Can't do it.
Yeah.
And I just can't get over the thought of that, of like super hot water going through that plastic and sitting. I'm like, what is the plastic to coffee ratio in the final cup? It freaks me out.
Yeah. I can't think about that anymore, actually.
Yeah.
I can't think about how much plastic is in my body right now.
It's so hard. I know. It's so hard.
Just like,
I really avoid it.
A lot of plastics happening in there.
Yeah. It's true.
So we're here in Austin, Texas with Annalise Gratovich at Print Austin and Cara Duvall and Frank Rose.
Yes.
And me. And we're all here for the print fair.
Yeah.
We had tried to do this when you were in Santa Fe.
We did.
And it didn't work out. And then we were like, oh, let's do it remote. And then we're like, wait a second, we're coming to Austin. Let's do it in person.
This is perfect. Third time. At first, I lost my voice after the opening.
That's right.
And then I think got a little sick on the residency, which then was just busy. And then this is perfect timing.
It's great.
Just a few months later.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
So this is the first time that we're participating in Print Austin. It's been going on for how long?
This is year 12? It's 11 or 12.
11
at this point. I think
Ben said last night.
I think it is. Yeah. Which is amazing.
Yeah.
And we're so lucky in Austin to have an event like this that brings so many great printmakers, galleries, print shops from across the country. Out of state, out of the country. It's really amazing.
Yeah.
And just to be here in town, it's just an incredible program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's the Print Expo that we're participating in. It's like a 2-day print fair. But there's a bunch of other stuff happening, yeah?
Yes. All throughout the month. It technically begins mid-January and goes through mid-February. So there are programs at galleries and there are artist talks, exhibitions, demos, workshops, programming at the museum and the Blanton Museum here in town. And it culminates in this print fair. And so this is kind of the big party at the end of it, which is really cool and
That's
fun.
so great.
Yeah.
How many years have you been participating in the fair?
I participate differently throughout the whole time I've been participating differently. I am one of the founding board members of the organization. So I helped a lot with establishing different programs in the beginning and just lending my assistance with that. And then I've done some curating for some invitational exhibitions. I've helped with some installation and some last minute framing needs that always come up when artwork is shipped through the mail, since I have the framing experience through my day job. And then I've participated as an artist with some exhibitions. I've done some interviews on behalf of the organization and then have done some artist talks myself. So
you've done a lot.
I've been really fortunate to have been involved since the beginning in many different ways, which has been a lot of fun. And then I've done the expo, I think, every year that we've had it, which started in a little room in this very cool DIY kind of punk space, which had kind of sketchy wooden floors, and then it was so dark and not climate controlled, but we did it. We put our works on paper up, and we had a good crowd, and it was really exciting. And then we started getting into bigger and more accessible venues.
How satisfying that must feel to see something start, like you said, so small, so DIY, so like precarious, to what it is now.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
And that is really through the hard work of Kathy Savage, who's been she's our founding member and is the current director, has been the director. It was started by Kathy Savage and Elvia Perrin, who teaches. She's faculty at Texas State and a really great printmaker. She stepped away from the organization a handful of years ago, and then Kathy has been really the captain of the ship since then. And now we have Ben Munoz as an interim director. And we've expanded our board, which has been great. So I really have high hopes for their organization, in the coming years. I think it's going to hopefully keep getting bigger and better. It's been on that trajectory for a while. So that's amazing.
It's cool to see Ben step into that role. So we've worked with Ben a few times at our little space. We had two shows with Ben, and he's got a show coming up at Etcho Mono in April or May. And just to like kind of follow his progress as an artist has been so much fun, and such a joy to see him step into that.
Yes,
cool.
We're fortunate to have him on board. He's got a lot of energy and is very excited and is able to devote the time, which is really great. So
how does he do that? Because he has 3 children.
We need to get Ben in here. I don't know. I
do not understand that. I was, talking to people coming through, other printmakers that have traveled from Oklahoma and from, I think someone was from, not Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, I think. And they were saying they wanted to have something like that where they lived, and to just feel the inspiration that it creates, and I'm sure for the artists that are involved as well, just like to be infused with new ideas and meet people, and just it seems wonderful.
I know I feel that way.
Yeah.
And in print, Austin had like a really pivotal impact in getting the Print Santa Fe event started a couple of years ago, which unfortunately didn't happen again this year. But really, I've been inspired ever since to try to make it happen again. And so I'm starting to kind of plant some seeds and think about ways to just not only do that event, but to kind of, bring together printmakers a little bit more in Santa Fe, and maybe even thinking about Southwestern more broadly. I think it's really cool what you all have here. And I think there's a lot of, I think, need and desire for it in Santa Fe and New Mexico in general. There's a lot of printmakers, a lot of stuff going on. Yeah.
And historically, I think it would be so great. And the Print Santa Fe was amazing.
Yeah, it really was.
We were all super excited about that. And it'll be great to have the next iteration of that. I'm sure it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
And that's how we made our connection.
That's
right.
That's right.
Yeah. And here we are
in person.
Yeah.
Because we had interacted through social
Yeah.
before and know a lot of the same, printmakers.
Right.
But then getting to meet in person and kind of be friends and then have our first exhibition together, which was really such a joy.
Yeah.
And getting to know you, Kara, has just been, you're so great.
Well, I think that community aspect, that's really, such a key component, I think, of printmakers, but also kind of inherent in the medium, so much of it can be collaborative, and the democratization of the print itself and how a lot of times it can be very affordable. It has this inherent vibe of community in it. And I think we need it now more than ever.
Yeah, we do. We do. And also it's because so much of it really does have kind of a steep learning curve in process and chemistry and equipment. Like, yes, you can do the DIY, work at home, absolutely. But oftentimes you need equipment, you need, chemistry for different processes. And there's a kind of a barrier to entry for a lot of that. Like, a lot of times you have to go to a program or a university, or you have to find people that have the equipment or the know-how. And sometimes you have to know people who have encountered the same problems that you're encountering to see how they have fixed it. Because so much of it is just, it's so hard to do it all on your own. So then the medium kind of forces you into the community to do that problem solving. Totally. And finding the people like in the country, like, oh, why did this happen this way? How do I fix this? And it's like, I was told by so-and-so that you had this problem and you figured it out. What did you do? So everybody seems, really excited to help each other out and just advance the medium and help each other's practices. And that's just, it's so fun. We seem to just really vibe on that, which is cool.
Yeah. I have definitely felt that there's the energy of like you said, celebration, lifting each other up, curiosity, working together, and just sharing. It's beautiful.
My friend Joy has started. She's in Houston, and she's an amazing printmaker, muralist. She goes by Killjoy on Instagram. And so she has started calling her community mycelium. And so I hate mycelium on her like Instagram posts and stuff. And it's so much like that because we feed each other, we send each other these nutrients, we're helping each other out in our network, our web, and then the prints could be seen as our the fruit of our our little fruiting bodies of all of our collaborative efforts. So I really love that, idea.
That's wonderful.
So important. I think that printmakers are a great role model for the rest of the world.
I think so too. Constantly astounded by people.
Well, so we're gonna dive into you, Annalise. I'm curious how your start in printmaking happened. Where did you start to grow those little mycelium and connect with other printmakers?
It was in community college, which I came to super young. I was 16 and doing a program where I could get high school credit. I had left my high school and was able to test into ACC. And
is that the one that's right here?
So that is an amazing campus, and now the print shop is there. But this was at the old Austin High School, which was like right downtown Austin. And the print shop was in the basement. And I had been so bored at high school. I was just like, I have to get out of here. And my parents were like, if you figure out how to do your higher education, we don't care if you finish high school or not. So I was out of there as soon as I legally could be in the state of Texas, which was 16. And looking back, I'm kind of shocked that I did that. But it's one of the best decisions I've ever made for myself. So I was taking classes at ACC around people who were, a much more diverse group of people, some other kind of high school age folks who were doing dual credit programs, but then people who were working in other industries and being with, adults and just older people was really cool. Got me interested in all different types of classes. And so I was doing different things then and working in the arts and in the classes there. And then I found the printmaking studio and was just like, what is this? This is so cool. And just was captured by the presses. This is so many people's story of just like seeing the through the window in the door and like, what is this world? I want to experience this. So I did that and got the print bug immediately and started just taking classes there spring, summer, fall. And then I had a great mentor who taught me how to build frames for my work and was just really pushing me to get work into different local exhibitions with different printmaking organizations. And then I was able to do framing jobs on the side. And then from there, I went to UT and was in the print program there, University of Texas here in Austin. And then started interning and working at Flatbed Press, which is a printmaking, a fine art print publisher here. So I was there for a long time. So I was really fortunate to have the time and get the print bug so bad that I was spending all my time in the shop, and then was able to work, adjacent jobs and pick up jobs and make money that way. And then, have been doing it ever since. Wow. When I was working at Flatbed, I was doing some collaborative printing, and then kind of decided that's not my strong suit, and didn't enjoy it as much as I thought that I would, and really enjoyed the collection archive side of it, and doing exhibitions. And managing the collection and supporting artists that way. And I still was a collaborative printer on certain projects when I would, when there was an artist I really wanted to work with, or there was a particular project. So that was really great. And I would self-publish there after hours and on the weekends, and keep my practice going that way. And then I left Flatbed about 5 years ago, and am now working in the prints and drawings collection of the Blanton Museum of Art. I'm a senior preparator there, so I handle all the works on paper, getting them ready for exhibition or collections housing or loans. I do some light conservation work that we can do in the studio there. And I have a studio, my personal studio at Canopy here, which is now where I self-publish, and do have relationships with other publishers that I co-publish with. So that's it in a very kind of large nutshell.
Yeah. Wow.
Can you see any like little seeds from when you were younger that kind of allowed for that opening when you saw printmaking happening? You were like, that's it. Like, can you see, like, were there like technical things you were doing when you were younger, or like, because of course printmaking can be so technical and it's so process oriented. Are there any kind of connections you can make to your past that you were like, oh, I can see why I was drawn to that?
Absolutely. My parents are both working artists. They're both musicians, and that I think really fostered creativity in me. And they never pushed my brother or I to be musicians. They never pushed us, my brother or me. And instead they were like, yeah, if you want to try something, let's go ahead and try it. And they were, they got us into different music programs. I tried different instruments. They would send us to little, art camps. I remember doing a couple of those, which was fun. Oftentimes we were, just playing outside a lot. They lived outside of the city. So there was just a lot of curiosity. And then I was raised with this, idea, if you want to try something, just figure out a way to try it out. And I do remember going to a little like week-long art camp at some point where I did printmaking. It was screen printing, and I did some sunflowers and like the rainbow rolls on my little sunflowers. And I saw those prints actually not long ago at home when Mom was cleaning up some stuff and I was there. So that was actually my first print experience. But yeah, they really fostered that creativity and like figure it out kind of mentality, which I have a huge DIY spirit, and I really like problem solving. They encouraged that, and they were also really open about how hard it is to be a working artist. And they were, my father was a professor. He also plays in the symphony and the opera. My mom was the principal keyboardist there, and also an educator. And they performed. So they had many, many jobs, and they did that to support us and also support their careers, their personal careers, as well as their academic careers. And so my brother and I both got a big dose of reality in terms of like, if you want to do it, it's going to be hard. You're going to be working a lot. You're going to have to fill many buckets throughout the day. And, it's worth it. Yeah. I think maybe sometimes I wish they had pushed me.
That's so important. To have that reality check. Because I never got that until like I graduated college and was like, okay, now what? You know,
Sure.
it's like, it's not, I've heard it's being talked about a little bit more in higher education, but when we were in school, it was like, okay, you're in your bubble, and then, okay, now go be an artist.
Yeah.
How?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think I was really fortunate too to have my mentorship at community college. It was like, oh, you should apply to these shows, and then you're going to have to frame your work. So why don't we teach you how to do that? And there's a wood shop right here. And that was invaluable, and really, in a way, kind of got me ready for the career that I have now in the museum. There's a lot of different, there's different museum standardization and best practices. Of course, you have to learn those things, but it's tracing it back. It's really interesting to see the way it's all developed.
Yeah. And by the way, you're going to be rejected for 10 shows before you get one. And
oh yes, you build a tough outer layer for sure. Yeah. And then you just learn, like, everybody has different opinions. Not everybody vibes with the same thing. It's subjective and it's not personal. And sometimes the piece is just too large, or sometimes a theme develops and it's like, oh, this just isn't great for this theme. And I think it's really important just to keep putting it out there and to keep just, letting that roll off, because it's going to be a perfect fit at some point, at some time.
Even when you find your voice, it's like, so much depends on where the world is at. And sometimes it's going to intersect and sometimes it's not, and so kind of rolling with that is kind of interesting too, because I think for me anyway, it's so important to just maintain that like sense of inner authenticity and integrity and do what you do regardless.
Yes.
But the world isn't always going to respond to it in the same way.
Yes, that's right. And oftentimes creative people are kind of on the same wavelength. And going back to this idea of like the creative mycelium, and you gifted me this Rick Rubin book too, and he talks about this. These ideas come up at the same time, and it's in the collective consciousness. And then if we're really paying attention to our intuitive voice and what's going on around us, a lot of times we're working in similar themes, and that may not be what people necessarily are ready to digest at the time. And, in publishing, we would experience this where we'd make a print, and I've experienced this in my own practice. It has to kind of decant for a little while. You make it, and then maybe people don't quite see it at the beginning, and sometimes it just takes a little bit of time. But it's still very important to do those things and to pay attention to those creative drives, because I think so much of it is shared. Really shared consciousness, especially because we're all living in such an interconnected world. So we really influence each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's author, philosopher, very, very hot right now in certain circles. Bayo Akofolome is how you pronounce his name. Kenyan, but I think lives right now in the US. And he is talking about how his idea of what the soul is shifting from, we have a single soul, and that soul is actually a matrix that is that connects us, that is connecting us all. It's almost like it is mycelium. It's the interstitial fluid that's going between us and informing all of us. And so it's not a singular, isolated thing. And if I'm speaking this incorrectly, I'm sorry, but this is my understanding of what he's talking about, and that it is actually, that it is like you said, we're way more interconnected through the soul than we realize.
I believe it 100%. I'd love to read that. Yeah, that sounds beautiful.
Well, I think like artists are that sort of that birthing media. It's like I think artists are, generally bringing things into the world that the world isn't ready for yet. That tend to sort of think about things outside of current accepted paradigms, but also being able to take like A to Z kind of leaps. Is to be able to see beyond the steps needed to get from A to Z, and being like, okay, well, what about Z? Here's this, And it does take a while.
Yeah.
It does take a while. Yeah.
Yeah. And artists are tapping into the imaginal realm. That's like the active practice is going into the unknown, into the potentiality and pulling from that and bringing it and then materializing it, like you said, birthing it. And so that it's like I believe that the imaginal realm is it's like the precursor. It's the plasma. It's the plasma goo from which everything is then birthed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, people talk about the importance of being still and quiet, of having boredom, of having time to yourself, because we can make these rational connections and try to put it together like a puzzle, and we're planning every part of it. But you need that magical connection too, of having the subconscious influence what you're doing. I mean, I think that makes work very successful. And I can only speak for myself here, but that's, that's something that's very important to me in my practice is, of course I'm studying and I'm doing, investigating themes in my studio, my larger studio questions, and thinking about that intentionally. But then I also need that space for dreams to take over and subconscious, and for connections to be made that I would otherwise miss. And that's a big period of discomfort to me too. And I was kind of alluding to this earlier, but I tend to get incredibly agitated before I begin a big piece. And there are times when I have an idea and I sit down and I draw it and it comes very easily. But then there are other pieces, like I'm going to be starting the final piece in my big woodcut series this year, Carrying Things from Home. And so I have a lot of plans for that piece, and it's large, it's life size, and it's figurative, and I put a lot of symbolism in there, a lot of patterning, and there's an identity to the figure. So everything that I'm doing, I'm trying to support this idea, right, that I'm trying to get across. But then I have to have this time of those ideas just fermenting and having them bubble and come to the surface and make connections that I wouldn't make otherwise. And I tend to walk a lot. And so lately I've been so frustrated and just like it kind of feels like I'm behind the clock, right? Like I'm running out of time, like, oh, I really need to start this. But I've learned, and I kind of had this realization, I feel this way every time I'm about to start a really big piece. And I kind of had this shift in my mentality, like, oh, it's not that I'm feeling behind or feeling pressured to do this. It's the agitation of creating something. Right. And I feel this agitation, and it's just like it's a part of the creative process for me. And I'm trying to instead not let that stress me out and focus on the stress of it, and trying to fit in the time, after my day job, and having time to like really solidify these big ideas, but instead think of it like, oh, I need to make space for this agitation in my life as a part of the creative process. And again, like kind of almost not take it personally that it's happening. Like it's not like I'm behind or failing in anything, so I'm feeling pressure that way. It's just this this agitation of the creative process, that work is happening, even if I'm not consciously putting pencil to paper or a tool to a block. It's it's happening. And that's that agitation.
Yeah.
So that has been a really good thing for me to learn, because it lets me take my time, and things take the time they take. And I learned that lesson repeatedly as a printmaker and then just a person in the world. But that has been an exciting development to make in my practice, and just, find peace with that.
I love that.
Yeah. I had the image of a volcano, or
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
You've got volcano prints.
I have volcanoes. I have a lot of volcano imagery. Yeah.
I mean, that is exactly what a volcano is doing, right?
Yes.
It is truly, the land becomes agitated.
Yes.
And this force underneath is pushing up to create new life.
Yeah.
And to, see it as almost like, okay, these are just elemental forces at play in me, and that they need to happen. This needs to happen for whatever it is my vision is to be birthed.
Yeah.
To step out of the way and give it space.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah.
A creative process is very disruptive, I think. And then we live in a society and culture where like we want rigidity and we have to do things in a schedule that we're all following. And it's hard to let yourself step out of that and try to hold something that's different than that while you're also having to participate. You know, we don't really have a choice in that to an extent. So it's, I love the volcano imagery that you're thinking of.
I have a little dance troupe that we've been dancing and performing for 6 years now, and we're about to put on a show, and every single show leading up to it, there is a massive eruption that occurs. And this show that we're coming up to, I said to one of the other dancers, like, wow, it's so interesting, we haven't had our massive eruption yet. And then literally the next rehearsal we get, it's just absolute chaos. And I'm like, oh, here we go. And it's trusting that. It's like, okay, without that, whatever, it's almost like that is what's clearing the space, the debris. It's like breaking up the rigidity and the past of what was, so that this new thing could come through. But it can be so painful, like you said, and so just disruptive.
Yes, it can be really disorienting.
Yeah.
And I think it's great to be able to just give it the space that it needs in order to happen.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's like there's an obvious parallel to like the globe and society, right? Like being able to be comfortable with the chaos and the agitation that's happening and continue to move forward in that discomfort. But to bring it back to creativity, I think, we crave that. We crave comfort and we crave knowing and we crave all those things. And so it can be so hard to sit and continue to work in the midst of all of that discomfort. I know for me, like, I that's maybe one of the biggest lessons of my work and my life in general is just like learning to be comfortable not knowing and moving regardless. It's like that where the choices that I make come from can't always be based on like feeling that I have the answer, and just like, okay, well, what seems like the right choice? Okay, try that. And then see what happens.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful, because what you said is try that there's choice in that, and that's what we can cultivate, and what we can come back to is seeing where we have the choice to, like, okay, I'm feeling crazy right now, I'm going to go take a walk, or I'm going to shake, or I'm going to, like, these are my choices of how I can work with this energy that's coming through. I had a friend say to me recently that this world and we crave dynamism, but if we don't get dynamism, we will default to volatility. And I come back to that and thinking about, like, what is the difference between being dynamic and just being volatile, and that choice feels like a big factor in it. Is like being aware, being present, choosing, and recognizing that the pattern is happening, right?
Yeah.
I'm in the pattern. Okay, what do I choose? How do I choose to be with this pattern?
That's right.
Yeah.
And good things will come from allowing the pattern to happen.
Yes.
Yeah. Because, like, you could, if you're in that state of agitation, be like, no, I'm going to keep working on this project. I'm staying in the studio until I get it right, or you can be like, I'm going to take a walk.
Yeah, that's right. Or distract myself with something else that's actually just going to set me back, being intentional about. And movement too, and relaxing your nervous system through movement is so, that's a big one for me too in my practice, and taking a break, like a good physical break, and moving around and getting that energy out.
Yeah. Well,
I say this a lot, probably almost in all of these conversations, but like in the program that I went to in college, they really, it was pretty conceptual, and they wanted you to basically, I'll just speak for myself. I felt like they wanted me to justify all of my choices before I made them, and be able to understand and articulate everything that I was doing.
Yes.
I know that they were probably coming from a place of like, if you're an artist, you need to be able to talk about your work and have some kind of understanding of it. And that's good. But my experience of it was that it really kind of killed my drive to be creative for quite a while. It actually ended up shifting that energy into other areas. But I'm not making art objects right now, and it has come in various ways, but it really pushed me in a different direction. And I wonder, what I might have done. I don't know, if there was more spacious around, like, it's all right if you don't understand what you're doing, go ahead and do it anyway, know? And so it's an interesting way to kind of like look at that, and how, having that desire to know is great, but it can also be so constricting.
It can be. Yes. And I had the same experience too. When I went to UT for the program there, it was very much the same way. And then having critiques, you had to be much more defensive, and people wanted to know the nitty gritty of like all the decisions you're making, which I think there's a place for that, like you're saying, but I hated it. And I think it works well for some people. I think it's a good tool. It's good to learn, okay, what am I interested in? How do I investigate that? How do I do the research? But then you also need time to play and experiment. I mean, that's such a big part of it. And I think everybody, like, we make work that we figure it out after the fact.
Yeah.
And then we hang the work up, and then we find patterns, and that's how we find the next thread that we want to pull. And I think a lot of times that's almost disregarded, and work has to be, it has more value if it's highly rational, if you like understand it right away, and if it's just, if it's very clear, or sometimes not, but if you have like a great statement about the piece, or if it's very conceptual and intellectual. But I think you really need time to just allow for the play and the mystery, and sometimes you have to figure it out after the fact.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to value that as well, because that's fun. And it should be fun. I mean, we're making art because hopefully we love it, and it's what we want to do. And I have to remind myself too often to just have fun with my practice. And I'm doing this because I love it, right? So I don't want to do anything that's going to decrease how much I love it or take the joy out of it, because it's what I do in my, my free time. So I want to keep it, as fun as possible.
It's art. There's no rules.
There's no rules.
Like, take advantage of that.
Yeah, totally.
Skills, like, right? Yeah. There's learning skills, and there's learning your tool, and there's learning one's particular language, which is always evolving. But then there's the treating it like it is a child, like it is, something precious, and that it's here to actually inform us rather than us inform it. We are giving it the materials so that it can be, again, birthed, but there's something coming through that wants to change our reality, and giving it the space for it to speak what it's about, letting it's almost like in dream analysis, there's like the dream analysis that you look up, you Google, like, I dreamt about a dolphin. What does a dolphin mean? And then it spits out a response, dolphins mean blah, 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 play. But then there's just like, I had this dream. Okay, let the dream inform me and see, throughout the day, come back to it. And how is it showing up? Is it still speaking to me? And what is my intimate personal relationship with what's
Yes.
happening, rather than what is the prescribed easy go-to script for what is happening. And I think, in a lot of training, it can be just like, get it down, get the script down, get the languaging down so that you will be taken seriously. And rather than allowing for something unexpected and miraculous and new to emerge and inform us and change our languaging about it.
Yes. Yeah, I have a lot of friends who have experienced the same thing too, and like having to learn how to be an artist after art school and how to get back to it and how to do that, because it's so much just rigorous formal training, and it's like, it kind of just beats it out of you. And you have to recapture that. And
It makes sense, I guess, in Western society that you have to have some kind of justification for creativity.
I know.
And I can even imagine just on the university level, like, how do you justify the existence of your department? Well, you have to have some stuff to write and talk about and defend, like, okay, this is why we need funding for this and that and the other thing. But it can be a bit maddening.
Yeah, it can be. I wish there was a better in between, that just benefits people in the programs a bit more. But then, there's so many different types of artistic practices and ways that, we bring creativity to everything else, and there's seasons to that. And, I think it's great to be able to carry that creativity over, to multiple areas of our lives if one is not, resonating.
For sure. I mean, I think there's obviously certain artists that like get completely opened up by that, deeply intellectual process, and make great work because of it.
Yes.
And it just takes all of us, right?
That's right. Yeah.
I'm thinking, I guess I am thinking about that switch from approaching things from I understand this to I don't understand this, and I'm curious as where this is going to take me. And you saying, often that's, I get the sense that's a big part of your practice. And well, here's a question. When inspiration comes to you, does it come in a specific, like in a special way? Is it a vision? Is it a feeling? Is it a question? Is it,
That's a really good question to ask. I don't know that I've ever really thought about that. I know that there are times, like especially if I'm walking and thinking about a piece or these connections I'm trying to make and turning the thoughts into a visual language. Sometimes, yes, it just appears. It becomes like sometimes I arrive at it through talking to myself through language. And then sometimes I'm trying to visualize it. And then it comes together that way. And I can just kind of see bits and pieces of it. There are other times, entering like the flow state when I'm drafting and drawing and I work very, like a lot of artists, in iterative processes. So constantly making changes and redrafting and making, thumbnails, alternate drawings. But then there are times when it just clicks and I'm in that flow state and it's just all the drawing is coming together. So I think multiple ways. And I actually don't know if I have one that's more prominent than another. It probably depends on the intensity of the piece that I'm working on.
And now that you have come to this epiphany around the what did you call it?
Yes.
Agitation.
The agitation.
Mm-hmm.
Does it seem like now when the agitation arrives, there's almost like, it's like, oh yes, I'm close.
Yes.
Yeah.
When I kind of had that shift in my mentality, it became almost a comfort to know that I'm in that area of the process, and I'm like kind of excited about it because I'm like, oh, I know this means real cool things are about to, things I'm stoked on are going to happen, and I'm going to get into the really fun area of it.
love
and
that.
so it was really cool to be like, oh, this is actually a friend of mine. This feeling that's uncomfortable is actually really good for me, and I'll just let it do its thing, and it's gonna be like a harbinger of,
Yes.
like
Like
fun
your
times.
little buddy, the demon.
Yeah.
The demon
Yes.
buddy. You're like,
That's
come
right.
on over, demon buddy.
Yes, that's right. You again. Welcome.
Yeah. I when I would do, I guess it happens now too with sometimes with dance a little bit, and maybe with sewing. But when we were doing photography, both Frank and I were in a BFA program for photography.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the darkroom, and I would be developing prints. I always knew that it was going to be an amazing print because right before I put the paper into the developing solution, I would have to pee. And I would and I would have to stop everything, and I would have to go pee, but I really didn't want to because I was so excited about whatever was going to be happening.
Yeah.
And that was the sign that I was on the right track.
That's awesome. Another kind of physical release. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
So here's a few sort of slow round questions. What is your proudest failure?
It was, I think, recent. It was, so of course I'm going to take this to my practice.
Anytime.
Many personal failures, but yes, I think this newest etching that I've been working on, Ultra Horizon, which was in our exhibition, and we talked about this. I worked so hard on this etching. It's three plates, lots of different processes, line etching, step by line etching, and this one's for the real heads, and multiple areas of aquatint, getting lots of variation in my line quality, lots of variation in my tonal etching, using different mordants from ferric chloride to nitric acid. It's very, very chemistry heavy, process heavy, and I did this on a residency. Where I just set myself up for a lot of work. It was going to be a big challenge. But then we had unexpected things happen with the chemistry and the aquatint rosin, which is, part of the process. Those are the ingredients that make the process successful or not. And so the plates got a little messed up. And I had worked so hard on all this step biting and doing my stop out. And the piece was just, really intense. And I had to figure out how to solve these issues back home. I was hoping on this residency to get the plates done, get ready to audition. I really wanted this piece for our exhibition. And I had to re-etch those plates. And when you experience some of these problems, you can't just redo what you did before because it's going to make the problem worse and worse, right? You're etching down into the metal, so you can't just reapply what you're doing. And one thing my mentor, Terry Goodhue, says, she was one of my first teachers at community college. She was like, if there's metal, there's hope. And so you can play with the metal as long as you have it, but you have to know how to do it. And this is one of those things that I was talking about earlier. You have to find someone who's experienced the same problem. And how did you fix this? And it was the most challenging project I have done technically. And I couldn't get a good print from it. I had to work months and months. This went from, okay, I'm going to develop these plates in a week, to this project took me almost a year of, trying to fit it in here and there, and re-etching and rebiting, then proofing and all of this. It was so hard for me to get a good print. And before our show, I realized I might not be able to fix this with my skill set and the time I have available. And I was just pulling print after print, which were just so disappointing. I was so defeated. I gave myself a deadline. If I can't do it this weekend, I'm going to have to pivot and change the idea for this exhibition. And so I went home just so upset. And the next day I got up and I made my coffee and I was like, you know what? I have one more day. Let me go try. I know I said I wasn't going to do it. Let me go try. And I changed some variables and I was able to pull 2 prints, one of which was in the show, and we sold that one. And I have one which I am using to gain interest for the edition when I am able to edition it. But I almost gave up and almost pivoted, which could have been necessary, but I'm so glad that I was able to stick with that. I kept those plates. I almost said, okay, I'm going to have to make brand new aquatint plates for this. So that was a pretty big one.
That's amazing.
And I'm really excited to have that piece. And when people tell me they love it, I'm just like, that's the hardest thing I've ever done. Thank you.
That's incredible.
And
well, I didn't tell you this at the time, but we were the ones that bought that piece.
No way! Oh my God, I had no idea.
Well, I don't know. It's funny. I mean, it's probably silly. I don't know why I didn't. I was like, oh, I don't want to say that we were the ones that bought that. But anyway,
we both were like that one.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
That's so meaningful. That's gonna make me.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's the effort and the energy that went into it was very clear. And I mean, we don't. It's very hard to be at that gallery because I love everything that comes in. So we don't take much stuff home. But that was one that was like, okay. And we both really loved it.
Yeah.
Well, that's such a huge honor to me. And we're gonna cry.
We're gonna cry.
It's good podcast material.
Yeah, good podcast material. Yes, I appreciate that you appreciate it.
Yeah.
Like truly. Yeah.
And Martha, who works at the gallery, her dad was like, I want that. And we were like, sorry, it's sold.
So we might need to.
I think about him constantly. I really do, because I want to finish this piece.
Yeah.
And it is so intense. I might have to bring in some people to, hire some printers to come and help me set some time aside and do that. Because there's only so much one person can do. And sometimes we need to call on our print friends to get a project done.
Talk about tenacity, and also maybe
I can be so
stubbornness, which is wonderful.
But it's also that thing of like, this is a puzzle. There's an answer to the puzzle. I really want to figure it out. And there have been times when I've scrapped plates, when I'm just like, this isn't the time to figure this out. I'm just gonna, I'm not too far into it. I'm just gonna flip the plate over or just, sand it off and start over. But this one, I just really wanted to see it through. And I'm really happy with the work. This is a new direction for me. I want to keep working in this direction. So I think it's fitting that I made sure to get that one done.
Yeah, such a beautiful piece.
Speaks to me of what you said about your childhood upbringing and with your parents, and that they were just kind of like, yeah, we'll support you, but you got to figure it out. There's a lot to figure out. And that sense of I'm here learning, and everything I'm doing is, sounds like it's like, yes, you wanted to have the end piece, but it was so much about, I want to figure these things out. And there's a lot that goes into that. I mean, it's like you're a chemist, you're, problem solving and artist and all of these things. And I just, I'm want to give kudos to, that spirit and you. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And I have, I've had a lot of, artists along the way that definitely inspire that, and seeing other people do amazing projects. It's like, I want to do something big and cool and fun like that, and being in, my experience in print publishing too, it oftentimes work isn't made in a vacuum. And especially with printmaking, it's great to have a community or network to call upon. Or if a person doesn't know the answer, maybe they know somebody. And then on my residency, I became friends with a woman who is starting Moonlight Press in Oakland. And Nicole is her name, and I was so stoked to be there on the residency at the same time as her, because I've been obsessed with her work and her process and the shop that she's starting. I'm like, oh my God, they're so cool. And so I want to take my plates to her shop to steel face them. There's nobody in Austin that does that. And the steel facing is, you basically put a thin layer of steel on the surface of the copper plate. You do that in a solution and you run a current through it, and it's kind of like a chroming process. But it makes the copper more resilient. You can get more prints from it. You also don't have reactions between certain pigments in the copper itself. Certain pigments will kind of gray out or change color as you're, making friction with your tarlatan wiping the plate. So there are colors that just turn gray or muddy. And I'd love to play with a lot of color in this piece as well. So I want to fly the plates to Nicole at Moonlight Press and get them steel faced. And after all of this, I'm going to strap them to me and fly them. And, they're going to be on me after all this work. Like, there's no way I could ship them. So I'm trying to find time to where our schedules align so I can take them to steel face them and then jump into the editioning, which I was hoping to have started already. I still want to start this spring. So hopefully edition to be announced, and I'll send
awesome.
I'll send some to Hetcho Gallery in Santa Fe.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What's a simple life lesson that you wish you learned earlier?
Oh, just to chill a bit. Not everything has to be done at right now. And relaxation is really important, and relaxation is active. You can actively relax, and it's a good thing. And I think because I've worked so hard since I've been a young person, and working jobs for money, and then doing things for my creative practice, and then I have massively overworked myself in the past and have been I can't spend this time with family, and I can't have this relationship. These things are taking a lot of time, just not enjoying my time when I'm off. And that has been a lesson for me to learn, and how to slow down and how to just really enjoy it. And it's fine. Work is always going to be there. Yeah. It's going to be okay to just take a break and just really enjoy it. And I really enjoy my time off now when I take it, which is awesome.
That's great.
Yeah. I was going to ask you've mastered that, or that's going to be...
Sometimes I feel like I'm close to mastering time off. There are times when it just hits right. It's life cannot be any better right now. And it's just, oftentimes simple things. If I do just catch a beautiful moment at the boardwalk. I'm at the hike and bike trail here a lot, and doing things like that, taking an unexpected day off to go hike with my partner and just get out in nature. That's a really big one. So oftentimes they're outdoor things, or enjoying a really good show. And just getting really deep into someone else's creative work.
Cool. So you've got you're working on Ultra Horizon. You're working on the final piece in your large 8.
This will be the 8th. The Fool
series.
Will be the
Can you give a just sort of short encapsulation of that project? I know it's dense, but...
Yes. So I've been working on this for just over 10 years now, and I do one of these woodcuts about every year and a half, it turns out. And so they're life-size, hand-carved. It's colored with a process called chincolle, which is a way of essentially collaging hand-dyed papers that I am dyeing and cutting. And so each figure is this totemic being that is of a soul identity. I have a mariner for exploration. I have a hunter and a builder, food and shelter. There's a musician for the arts. I have the mother and the undertaker for life and death. The most recent has been the healer. And then now the final one will be the fool. So the last ones are the more metaphysical and esoteric of the bunch. And I'm really excited for the symbolism that I'm going to be putting in the fool. That piece, I'm excited to be ending it on that note. And especially I think it's a great one to end this big series with, that I've worked a long time on. And it takes a team of people to print these as well. So I co-published these with Flatbed Press here in town, and work with a team of 4 to 5 other people to do the editioning. So that one we're publishing in October. Cool. So that's going to be exciting. And end of an era.
We'll see them in Santa Fe.
We'll see them in Santa Fe 2026.
Yeah.
When you started that, when you started this body of work, did you have any sense or idea that, I'm going to do 8 and it's going to take me this much time? Or was it just something that you just kept continuing to come back to and do. Yeah.
The latter.
Yeah.
I knew that I wanted there to be 8. And when I was, so I'm a tough student. And so I was constantly leaving school and like working and then, okay, I'll go back and like, oh, I didn't finish high school. I have to go get my degree. I'll finish those final 3 credits or whatever. So there was a time when I was an exchange student and I wanted to do some traveling. I figured out I could, do that through school. So I was living in France for a short time in Paris, which sounds wild. Just to be able to do that was really cool. I was so broke and it was so hard. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And being a foreigner, and it was a brutal winter that year and it was just a real tough time. And I started the series while I was there and thinking about my family, and I was just struggling and thinking about my Ukrainian family and their severed ties. My father and his parents left Ukraine during World War II, literally with what they could carry with them. And so that's an impetus for the series. And I do talk about that more in depth in the Hello Print Friend.
That's right.
The first episode of the Hello Print Friend podcast I did with Miranda. I started drawing the figures there and got back and I knew that there was going to be 8, but I had no idea what this project was going to entail. And I wanted them to be life-size. And the first time I proofed one, it was with a wooden spoon in the garage. And it took me 6 hours of burnishing with a wooden spoon. And I was just like, this is going to be so hard. And then I was working at Flatbed at that time when I got back. I had previously interned and then I returned there when I was back in the States. And the printers there, and Catherine, they said, just run it through the big Tackich press here. And that was a game changer. And then they approached me about co-publishing the series, which really let me run with it and expand the ideas. And then I couldn't find the materials that I quite wanted, so I started making them, which is my hand-dyed paper. And so we've been doing that together all this time. I've worked with multiple sets of printers on this project. Which has been amazing. Had I known what it was going to be when I started, I don't think there's any way, I would have done it. But it's good to be able to have that project. And then I go and I do other things and switching back and forth between the woodcut and the etching, very different processes and materials. And I like that. And I've enjoyed not having like a set amount of time I have to complete this project in, because it's something, it's definitely been a labor of love in that regard.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Right. Well, I guess you have a set amount of time. You have to complete it now.
Now I do. By October. And Alyssa, I'm going to do it. Alyssa Ebinger is the lead printer with me on this project. And she has since left Austin. She's moved to New York. But she's generously coming back in October to do the last one with me. And I'll be working with Joshua Orsburn.
Nice.
A friend of the pod.
Yeah.
too. Yeah. He's the new lead printer there at Flatbed. So we'll be the team together. It's going to be super fun.
Cool. Yeah. And any exhibitions coming up?
Let's see. The next thing I'm doing is the Fine Art Print Fair in Brooklyn. And then
We'll be there too.
Yes, that's right. We'll see you in New York. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
So excited for that. And so the next thing I have coming up is 2026 at Hetcho Gallery.
Oh, wow.
In Santa Fe.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm keeping my schedule.
Wow.
It's publications this year. Publications. And so aside from this fair and Brooklyn, so I'll be teaching this intensive summer program for a week at the University of Omaha, Nebraska, for Frogmans. And so I'm doing that intensive workshop. And we submitted, my friend Julia Curran and I, who's also a great printmaker, also has shown with you. We did a 2-woman proposal for the spring break art fair that was happening in LA this year. We were accepted into that art fair, but then, of course, with the fires and how devastating that has been, they've pivoted that to a virtual program. So was going to do LA and Brooklyn this spring, which is amazing. But I'm glad that they're able to pivot and offer some programming while still supporting their community here. And Julia's based in LA. So I was really happy that she reached out to me to do a proposal together. So we're interested in pitching this proposal.
Yeah. Well,
for
both
a
y'all,
two-woman show.
building the Etcho family right there.
Yeah, that's right. That's
cool.
right.
All right. I think that's it. I think we got to go. Go
Sling
back to
some
our
prints.
booths.
We gotta go to
Okay.
our booths.
Awesome. I'm so glad we fit this in.
Yeah,
Yes,
me too.
visit. This is such a pleasure.
Yeah.
It's always just so nice being in community with both of you in person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This has been a real beautiful time together.
Yes, I agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you.
Annalise.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. See you at the fair.
Okay.